When the nurse handed me the discharge papers, I remember thinking the hardest part was over. 6 months of chemotherapy, 6 months of nausea so violent I couldn't stand the smell of my own kitchen. 6 months of watching my hair fall out in clumps, of sleeping 16 hours a day, of my son David telling me over the phone that he loved me but couldn't visit because his wife Jennifer was immunocompromised and they couldn't risk exposure. I understood. Or at least I told myself I did. The cancer had been caught early. Stage 2 breast cancer, the doctors said, like that was supposed to make me feel lucky. And maybe it was. I'm 62 years old. I've lived a good life. I raised David by myself after his father walked out when he was 7. I worked 2 jobs to keep our little house on Maple Street, the one with the blue shutters and the garden I spent 20 years perfecting. Every rose bush, every stone in that pathway, I put them there with my own hands. That house was more than walls and a roof. It was proof that I'd survived, proof that I'd given my son a stable home even when the world tried to knock us down. So when I came home that Tuesday afternoon in October, all I wanted was to sit in my kitchen, drink a cup of tea that didn't taste like metal, and feel the sun coming through the window. I wanted normal. I wanted my life back. I didn't expect to find the envelope. It was on the kitchen table, partially hidden under a stack of old mail that someone, probably David, had brought in while I was at my last appointment. I almost missed it, but something about the return address caught my eye. First National Bank, Mortgage Services Department. My stomach turned. Not the nausea from the chemo this time. Something else. Something cold. I sat down slowly, my legs suddenly weak. I hadn't had a mortgage in 12 years. I'd made my final payment on my 51st birthday. I remembered it clearly. I'd bought myself a small cake from the bakery, sat alone in that same kitchen, and cried happy tears because I'd done it. The house was mine. Fully mine. So why was I holding a mortgage statement? My hand shook as I opened it. The paper felt too smooth, too official. My reading glasses were upstairs, but I didn't need them to see the numbers. Outstanding balance. $180,000 payment, due. 1847 Where's account. Holders. Margaret Chen and Jennifer Chen. Read it 3 times. 4. The words didn't change. My name was there, Margaret Chen, but so was hers, Jennifer, my daughter-in-law. The woman I'd welcomed into my family 3 years ago. The woman who'd smiled at our family dinners and called me Mom, and told me how grateful she was to have me in her life. The woman who'd told my son not to visit me during chemotherapy. I sat there for a long time, staring at that paper. The kitchen was so quiet, I could hear the clock ticking above the sink. The same clock that had been there since David was in high school. Tick, tick, tick. Each second felt like a small stone dropping into a well, disappearing into darkness. There had to be a mistake. That's what I told myself. Banks made errors all the time, didn't they? Maybe someone had stolen my identity. Maybe this was some kind of scam. I thought about calling David immediately, but something stopped me. A small voice in the back of my mind, a whisper I didn't want to hear. Instead, I called the bank. The woman on the phone was polite, professional. She asked for my account number, verified my social security number, confirmed my address. And then she pulled up the file. Yes, Mrs. Chen. I see here that the loan was processed on May 15th. A home equity line of credit in the amount of $180,000 secured against the property at 428 Maple Street. Both you and Jennifer Chen are listed as co-borrowers. That's impossible, I said. My voice sounded strange, far away. I never signed anything. I never applied for any loan. There was a pause. I heard her typing. According to our records, all the paperwork was notarized and submitted with both signatures. The funds were disbursed on May 18th via wire transfer to an account ending in 7392. May 15th, I'd been in the hospital that day. I remembered because it was the day I'd gotten my 3rd round of chemo, the one that hit me so hard I'd stayed overnight for observation. David had driven me there that morning. He'd held my hand in the waiting room. He'd kissed my forehead and told me he'd check on the house while I was gone, make sure everything was secure. Ma'am, are you still there? I need copies of the paperwork, I whispered. All of it. I can have that sent to you within 5 to 7 business days. No. My voice was firmer now, cutting through the fog. I need it today. This is fraud. I never signed anything. Another pause. Longer this time. I understand your concern. Mrs. Chen, let me transfer you to our fraud department. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone, transferred from person to person, explaining the same thing over and over. By the time I hung up, my head was pounding and my hands were still shaking. But I had answers. Terrible, impossible answers. The signatures were on file. Both of them. Mine and Jennifer's. The notary seal was legitimate. Everything looked legal and proper, except I had never signed anything, which meant someone had forged my signature. Someone who had access to my house. Someone I trusted. I sat in that quiet kitchen as the sun moved across the floor, and I felt something inside me that I hadn't felt in years. Not since David's father left. Not since I had to choose between paying the electric bill or buying groceries. Betrayal tastes like copper, like blood in your mouth. It feels like the ground opening up beneath your feet. I picked up my phone. My finger hovered over David's name, but I didn't press it. Not yet, because deep down, in a place I didn't want to look, I already knew. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, the same bed I'd slept in for 23 years, and stared at the ceiling, watching shadows from the streetlight move across the plaster. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that mortgage statement, those numbers, that name next to mine, Jennifer Chen. My mind kept circling back to small moments I'd ignored. Little things that hadn't seemed important at the time, like how Jennifer had offered to help me organize my paperwork when I first got diagnosed. "You need to focus on getting better, Mom," she'd said, her hand warm on my shoulder. "Let me handle the bills, the insurance forms, all that stressful stuff." I'd been grateful. I was so tired back then, so overwhelmed. I'd given her access to my filing cabinet, shown her where I kept everything. My deed, my tax documents, my bank information. Or how she'd insisted on being my emergency contact at the hospital, saying David was too emotional to handle the medical decisions if something went wrong. That had made sense too. She was a paralegal. She knew how to read contracts, how to navigate systems, or how she'd visited me exactly twice during 6 months of treatment. Both times for less than 20 minutes. Both times wearing a mask, standing near the door, apologizing about her compromised immune system. I'd never thought to ask what condition she had. I'd just accepted it, believed her. The next morning, I called my nephew Marcus. He was a lawyer in the city, specialized in family law, but I knew he'd understand what I needed. Marcus had always been sharp, even as a boy. His mother, my younger sister Diane, used to joke that he could spot a lie from a mile away. "Aunt Maggie?" His voice was concerned when he answered. "How are you feeling? Mom said you just finished treatment." "I need your help, Marcus." I kept my voice steady. "And I need you not to tell anyone." "Not yet." I heard him shift, the sound of a door closing. "What happened?" I told him everything. The mortgage, the forged signature, the dates. He was quiet for a long moment after I finished. "Do you have the documents the bank sent?" "They're emailing them today. Forward them to me the second you get them. Don't talk to David. Don't talk to Jennifer. Don't let them know you're suspicious." His voice had gone cold, professional. "If this is what I think it is, Aunt Maggie, we need to be very careful about how we handle it." "What do you think it is?" Another pause. Fraud, forgery, elder abuse, possibly more, depending on where the money went. He exhaled slowly. "I'll start making calls. But Maggie, I need you to prepare yourself. If Jennifer did this, David either knows or he's going to have to choose. Either way, this is going to get ugly." I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling my heartbeat. Strong, steady. The chemo hadn't killed me. The cancer hadn't killed me. I wasn't going to let this kill me either. "I'm ready," I said. The documents arrived that afternoon. I printed them out with trembling hands, spread them across my dining room table. And there it was, in black and white. My signature. Except it wasn't my signature. It was close. Someone had practiced, studied my handwriting, but the capital M was wrong. I always looped it twice. This one only looped once. I picked up my phone and took pictures of everything. Then I called Marcus back. "It's definitely forged," I said. "I'm coming over. Don't touch anything else. We need to document everything exactly as it is." While I waited for Marcus, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I opened my laptop, the one David had set up for me years ago, and logged into my bank account, the account ending in 7392, the one where the money had been transferred. It wasn't mine. I'd never seen it before, But when I clicked through the transaction history, my stomach dropped. Luxury purchases. Designer handbags. A vacation to Hawaii in June while I was in the hospital too weak to stand. A $15,000 payment to something called Desert Rose Wellness Spa. Another $8,000 to a plastic surgery center. And then, buried in the middle of the statements, something that made my blood run cold. A $30,000 wire transfer to Golden Phoenix Casino. Another $20,000 2 weeks later. Another $25,000 after that. I sat back, my head spinning. This wasn't just about stealing my house. This was about something darker, something desperate. When Marcus arrived, he found me still sitting there, staring at the screen. He took one look at my face and knew, "Show me." I turned the laptop toward him. He scrolled through the transactions, his jaw tightening with each page. Finally, he looked up. "She has a gambling problem." I nodded slowly. I'd suspected it the moment I saw those casino transfers, but hearing Marcus say it out loud made it real. "David doesn't know," I whispered. "He can't know. He would have told me. He would have—" "Are you sure about that?" I looked at my nephew, at his serious eyes, so much like his mother's. "What do you mean?" "Aunt Maggie, Jennifer didn't do this alone. Someone had to notarize those documents. Someone had to be there when she forged your signature. And someone had to make sure you were out of the house at exactly the right times." He leaned forward. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about the answer. Who drove you to your appointments?" "David," I said automatically. "He drove me every time. Every single time?" I started to nod, then stopped. My mind was racing back through the spring, through those blurry, painful weeks. Wait, no, there were 2 times when David couldn't make it. He was out of town for work. Jennifer drove me instead. When? I pulled out my phone, checking my calendar. April 20th and May 15th. Marcus's expression darkened. May 15th, the day the loan was processed. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. "She needed me out of the house," I said slowly. "She needed time to what? Bring someone here? The notary?" "Probably. She couldn't risk you coming home early." Marcus pulled out his own phone, started typing rapidly. "I'm going to request security footage from the bank, and I'm going to subpoena the notary's records. But Maggie, this is going to take time. Weeks, maybe months. In the meantime, you need to protect yourself." "How?" He looked at me with something like pity. "You need to file a police report, today, and you need to tell David." I called David that evening, not because I was ready, but because Marcus said I had no choice. If I waited, it would look like I was hiding something. And if Jennifer discovered I knew, she might destroy evidence or disappear. "Be careful," Marcus warned me before he left. "Don't accuse. Just ask questions. Let him talk. People reveal more when they think they're explaining themselves." My son answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, Mom, how are you feeling?" His voice sounded so normal, so familiar. This was the boy I'd rocked to sleep when he had nightmares. The teenager I'd stayed up with until midnight, helping him study for chemistry exams. The young man who'd cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke his heart. "I need to talk to you about something," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Can you come over?" "Tonight?" There was a pause. "Is everything okay? Did something happen with your health?" "I'm fine, but this can't wait." "Okay, yeah, let me just— Jennifer and I were about to have dinner, but I can come after. Is an hour okay?" "Bring Jennifer," I said. The silence that followed lasted too long. "Mom, she's not feeling well tonight. Maybe it's better if— David." I let steel creep into my voice. "Bring your wife." Another pause. Then quietly, "Okay, we'll be there in an hour." I used that hour to steady myself. I made tea I didn't drink. I straightened the papers on my dining room table, arranging them in neat piles. The mortgage documents, the bank statements, the forged signature. Everything Marcus had told me to keep visible, but not confrontational. When the doorbell rang, my heart was hammering so hard I thought they might hear it. David came in first. He looked tired, I noticed, older than his 34 years. There were circles under his eyes and he'd lost weight. He kissed my cheek, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Jennifer followed a step behind. She was wearing what she always wore, expensive clothes that looked effortlessly put together. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She smiled at me, warm and concerned. "Mom, you look so much better," she said, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "Your color is back." "I'm so glad," I looked at her hand on mine. The manicured nails. The diamond bracelet David had bought her for their anniversary. The one he'd asked my opinion about because it cost $3,000 and he wasn't sure they could afford it. I pulled my hand away gently. Let's sit down. We moved to the living room. David and Jennifer sat together on the couch, and I took the chair across from them, the same chair where I used to read David bedtime stories, where I'd sat when the social worker came to check on us after his father left, where I'd sat the day David told me he was getting married. "What's going on, Mom?" David asked. His knee was bouncing, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. I picked up the mortgage statement from the side table and held it out. "Can you explain this?" David took it, frowning. Jennifer went very still beside him. I watched my son's face as he read. Confusion first, then shock. His eyes widened and his head snapped up. "What is this?" "This says you have a mortgage, but the house is paid off. You paid it off years ago." "That's what I thought too," I said evenly. "Until this arrived last week. This has to be a mistake. Some kind of identity theft." He looked at Jennifer. "Babe, didn't you help Mom with her paperwork? Did you see anything like this?" Jennifer's face was perfectly composed. "No, nothing. This is the first I'm hearing about it." She leaned forward, concerned. "Mom, did you call the bank?" "This is definitely fraud. Someone must have stolen your information." I held her gaze. "I did call the bank. They sent me all the paperwork. The loan was processed on May 15th, notarized and signed by both borrowers." I paused. "By me and by you, Jennifer." The room went dead silent. David's head swiveled between us. "What? That's impossible." Jennifer wouldn't... He looked at his wife. "Babe, what is she talking about?" Jennifer's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Something cold and calculating. "I have no idea. I never signed anything. This is insane." "The bank has your signature on file," I said quietly. "And mine. Except my signature is forged." "Mom, what are you saying?" David stood up, his voice rising. "Are you accusing Jennifer of what exactly? Stealing from you?" "I'm saying someone took out a mortgage on my house without my knowledge or consent. Someone who had access to my personal documents. Someone who knew exactly when I'd be out of the house for extended periods." I kept my eyes on Jennifer. "Someone who needed $180,000 very badly." Jennifer stood up too, her face flushing. "This is ridiculous. David, your mother is clearly confused. Maybe it's the medication or the stress from the treatment, but the money was transferred to an account ending in 7392, I continued, my voice steady. An account that shows purchases at luxury stores, a vacation to Hawaii, and over $75,000 in wire transfers to Golden Phoenix Casino." The color drained from Jennifer's face. David turned to her slowly. "Jennifer?" "I don't know what she's talking about," Jennifer said, but her voice had gone thin. "I don't have any account like that. She's making this up. She's never liked me, David. She's always—" "May 15th, I said softly. "The day you drove me to chemotherapy. The day David was out of town. The day I spent the night in the hospital because the treatment was so bad." I leaned forward. "The day you had the whole house to yourself." David was staring at his wife now, and I saw it. The exact moment doubt crept in. "Jennifer, tell me this isn't true." Jennifer's composure cracked. Her eyes filled with tears, her hands started shaking. "I was going to pay it back. I swear, David, I was going to fix it before she ever found out." The words hung in the air like shattered glass. David stumbled backward, sitting down hard on the couch. "Oh my God!" "I had some bad luck," Jennifer said, her voice breaking. "Just a rough patch. I thought I could win it back. I thought—" "You mortgaged my mother's house?" David's voice was barely a whisper. "While she was dying?" "I wasn't dying," I said quietly. "But no one was listening to me anymore." Jennifer was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streaks. "David, please, you have to understand. I had debts. Real debts. People were threatening me, and I panicked. I just needed time to—" "People were threatening you?" David's voice cracked. "What people? What are you talking about?" She wrapped her arms around herself, looking small suddenly. Vulnerable. "I borrowed money. From the wrong people. I thought I could win it back at the tables, just one good night, but it kept getting worse, and they said if I didn't pay—" She choked on a sob. "I didn't know what else to do. You could have told me." David shouted. He was on his feet again, pacing. You could have come to me. We could have figured something out together. Instead, He stopped, turned to look at me. Mom, I swear I didn't know. I had no idea she was— I know, I said. And I did. I could see it in his face, the genuine shock and horror. Whatever Jennifer had done, she'd done it alone. David ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. How much do you owe? To these people? Jennifer's voice was barely audible. 40,000. 40! David actually laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You stole 180,000 to pay back 40,000? I was going to invest the rest. Double it, triple it. Then pay back the loan and your mother would never have to know. She looked at me with desperate eyes. I'm good at poker, Mom. I really am. I just had a bad streak. It happens to everyone. Don't call me that, I said quietly. Don't ever call me that again. She flinched like I'd slapped her. David was still pacing, his breathing ragged. The Hawaii trip, the spa days, all those shopping bags you said were from clearance sales. He stopped, staring at her. That was all my mother's money. I was going to pay it back. With what? He shouted. You don't work. You haven't worked in 2 years. You said you were focusing on your health, on starting a family, and I believed you. I've been working 60-hour weeks to support us while you were— He couldn't finish the sentence. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to stay steady. There's something else you should know, David. He turned to me, and I saw my little boy in his eyes, lost, confused, wanting his mother to tell him everything would be okay. The bank says both signatures are on the documents, mine and Jennifer's, but I never signed anything. I kept my voice gentle. That means she forged my signature. That's not just fraud. That's identity theft. That's a felony. Jennifer's head snapped up. You wouldn't press charges. David, tell her she can't do that. But David wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me, and I saw something break in his expression. You should, he said hoarsely. You should press charges. David! Jennifer grabbed his arm, but he pulled away. You stole from my mother, while she had cancer, while she was fighting for her life. His voice was shaking. You looked me in the eye every single day and lied to me. You made me keep her away, told me not to visit because of your compromised immune system. That was a lie too, wasn't it? Jennifer didn't answer, but she didn't need to. You didn't want me there because you didn't want me to notice what you were doing. The paperwork. The documents. He pressed his palms against his eyes. God, I'm such an idiot. You're not, I said firmly. She betrayed both of us. I drove her there, David said, dropping his hands. To your house. On May 15th, I thought she was checking on things while you were in the hospital, making sure everything was secure. I gave her my key. He looked at me with devastated eyes. I helped her and I didn't even know it. That's not your fault, isn't it? He laughed bitterly. I'm your son. I should have been there. I should have been taking care of you, not sending my wife to rob you blind. Jennifer stood abruptly. I'm leaving. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, I said. My voice was quiet, but something in it made her freeze. You don't get to run away. Not this time. She turned, her tears gone now, replaced by something harder. What do you want from me? You want me to grovel, to beg? Fine, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I'll pay you back. With what money? I asked. I'll get a job. I'll figure it out. You took out a $180,000 mortgage against my house. Do you understand what that means? If you don't make the payments, and I know you haven't been making them because I checked, they'll foreclose. They'll take my home. The home I spent 23 years paying for. The home I raised my son in. So pay it. Jennifer's voice rose, hysterical now. You have money. You have savings. Just pay it off and move on. I stared at her, this woman I'd welcomed into my family, and felt something settle in my chest. Not anger anymore. Something colder, clearer. I spent my savings on cancer treatment, I said quietly. Every penny I had went to co-pays and medications and bills the insurance didn't cover. I have exactly $8,000 left in my account. That was supposed to get me through the next 6 months while I recover. The silence that followed was absolute. David sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. What have you done? He whispered. Jennifer opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she seemed to understand the magnitude of what she'd destroyed. I picked up my phone from the side table. I called the police before you came. I filed a fraud report this afternoon. They're sending a detective tomorrow to take my statement. I looked at Jennifer. I suggest you get a lawyer. Her face went white. You wouldn't. I already did. David! She turned to him, desperate now. David, tell her to stop. We can fix this. We can figure something out. Tell her! But David didn't move, didn't speak. He just sat there, staring at nothing. Jennifer left 20 minutes later. She grabbed her purse, threw a few desperate pleas at David that he didn't respond to, and then she was gone. The door slammed behind her, and the house fell into a silence so heavy it felt like drowning. David hadn't moved from the couch. He sat with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. I wanted to go to him, to hold him like I had when he was small, but I didn't know if he'd want that. Didn't know if I was his comfort anymore, or just a reminder of everything that had fallen apart. I'm sorry, he finally said. His voice was raw, scraped clean of everything but pain. You didn't do anything wrong. I married her. He looked up at me, and his eyes were red. I brought her into your life. I trusted her with you. That's on me. I moved to sit beside him, slowly, my body still tired from months of treatment. You loved her. That's not a crime. It should be, he said bitterly. When you love someone who... He couldn't finish. We sat there together in the dim light of the living room. Outside, I could hear the neighborhood settling into evening. A dog barking somewhere, a car passing, normal sounds, life continuing while ours cracked open. How did I not see it? David asked quietly. The gambling, the lies. How did I miss all of it? Because she didn't want you to see it, I said. People who are good at hiding things know exactly how to make you look the other way. I should have visited you more. During the chemo, I should have been there. You called me every day. That's not the same. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. I let her convince me it was safer to stay away. She made it sound so reasonable, so caring. And the whole time she was, his voice broke. I put my hand on his back, feeling his shoulders shake. My son, my baby. I'd protected him from so many things over the years, bullies, heartbreak, his father's abandonment. But I couldn't protect him from this, from the consequences of his own choices, his own trust. What happens now? He asked after a long moment. The detective comes tomorrow. Marcus is handling the legal side. He says we need to prove the signature was forged, which shouldn't be hard. Then it's up to the district attorney whether to press criminal charges. And if they do? Jennifer could face jail time. Felony fraud, identity theft, possibly elder abuse depending on how the prosecutor sees it. David was quiet for a moment. Good, he finally said. I looked at him, surprised. I mean it, he continued, his voice hardening. She deserves it. What she did to you? He shook his head. I don't care that she's my wife. I don't care what happens to her. You don't mean that, don't I? He turned to me, and there was something fierce in his expression now. Something I recognized. It was the same look he'd had at 7 years old, standing between me and his father during their last fight. Protection, loyalty. She hurt you. She could have cost you everything. Your home, your security, while you were sick. I know. And you're so calm about it. He studied my face. How are you so calm? I thought about that. About the rage I'd felt when I first opened that envelope. About the fear, the betrayal, the disbelief. It had all been there, sharp and cutting. But somewhere in the last few days, something had shifted. I'm not calm, I said.
I'm furious.
I'm heartbroken. But I'm also... I paused, searching for the right words. I survived cancer, David. 6 months of poison pumped into my body. 6 months of feeling like I was dying. And I came out the other side. I looked around my living room, at the photos on the walls, the plants in the window, the life I'd built. Jennifer tried to take my house. But she didn't. She can't. Because I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere. David's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Mom. I know you are. I'm going to fix this. I don't know how yet, but I will. You don't have to fix anything. This isn't your mess to clean up. She's my wife. He stopped himself. She was my wife. I don't even know anymore. That's something you'll need to figure out, I said gently. But not tonight. Tonight you're just tired, he nodded slowly. We sat together in silence for a while longer, and I felt something settle between us. Not peace exactly, but understanding. We'd gotten through hard things before. We'd get through this too. Eventually, David stood. I should go. I need to, I don't know, think, process. Where will you go? Home? He flinched at the word. I don't think I can go back there tonight. I'll get a hotel. Stay here, I said. Your room is still your room, Mom, please. I stood too, facing him. Let me take care of you. Just for tonight. Something in his expression softened. Okay, he whispered. That night, I made us scrambled eggs and toast. Simple food, comfort food. We ate at the kitchen table, mostly in silence, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not empty, just quiet. After dinner, David went upstairs to his old room. I heard him moving around up there, the familiar creak of the floorboards, the sound of the window opening. He'd always liked fresh air when he slept. I cleaned up the kitchen slowly, washing each dish by hand, even though I had a dishwasher. The warm water felt good on my hands. Normal. Real. When I finally went to bed, I lay there in the dark and thought about everything that had happened. The mortgage, the betrayal, the confrontation. And underneath it all, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Because the truth was out now. No more lies. No more pretending. Whatever happened next, legal battles, divorce, financial struggles, at least it would be honest. I touched the spot on my chest where the port for chemo had been, now healed. A small scar, evidence of survival. Jennifer had tried to take my house while I was fighting cancer, but she'd made a mistake. She'd underestimated how much fight I had left. The detective arrived at 9 the next morning. Her name was Sandra Chen, no relation, she assured me with a small smile, though the coincidence made things feel slightly less impersonal. She was in her 40s, I guessed, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner that immediately put me at ease. David sat beside me at the dining room table while Detective Chen spread out her notepad and recorder. He'd barely slept, I could tell. His eyes were hollow, his clothes the same ones from yesterday. But he was there, and that mattered. Mrs. Chen, I've reviewed the report you filed yesterday, Detective Chen began. I want to go through everything step by step, if that's all right. Start from the beginning, so I told her. About the cancer diagnosis. About Jennifer's offer to help with paperwork. About the envelope that arrived after my last treatment. About the forged signature and the $180,000 and the casino transfers. I kept my voice steady, factual, but my hands shook when I showed her the documents. She examined everything carefully, taking notes, asking questions. When did Jennifer have access to your documents? How many times was she alone in your house? Did you ever give her explicit permission to handle financial matters? No, I said. She offered to help with insurance paperwork, medical bills. But I never gave her power of attorney. I never authorized her to take out any loans. And you're certain this isn't your signature? I pointed to the capital M. I always loop it twice. This is only looped once. And the slant is wrong. I learned cursive in the 60s. Our teacher was very particular. My handwriting has a specific angle. Detective Chen nodded, making a note. Then she turned to David. Mr. Chen, what's your relationship to Jennifer Chen? She's my wife, David said quietly. For 3 years. We got married in 2022. And did you have any knowledge of these financial transactions? No, nothing, I swear. His voice was firm. I didn't know about the gambling, the debts, any of it. If I had, he stopped, swallowed hard. I would never have let her near my mother's house. Did you give her access to the property? I gave her my key. Once, on May 15th. Mom was in the hospital overnight and Jennifer said she wanted to check on things. Water the plants. Make sure the doors were locked. He looked down at his hands. I trusted her. Detective Chen's expression softened slightly. Mr. Chen, I need to be clear about something. Right now, based on the evidence, your wife is the primary suspect in a fraud investigation. If charges are filed, this could result in multiple felony counts. Do you understand that? Yes. And you're willing to cooperate with the investigation? Even though it involves your wife? David looked at me, then back at the detective. She hurt my mother. She stole from her while she was sick, so yes. I'll cooperate with whatever you need. Detective Chen nodded, something like approval in her eyes. All right. I'm going to need to take these documents as evidence. I'll also be requesting the bank's security footage from May 15th, the notary's records, and we'll have a handwriting expert examine the signature. She turned to me. Mrs. Chen, I want you to know that cases like this can take time, weeks, possibly months. But based on what I'm seeing here, you have a strong case. What about the house? I asked. The mortgage. If Jennifer can't pay, that's a civil matter, separate from the criminal investigation. You'll need to work with your attorney on that. But I'd recommend documenting everything. Every payment missed, every attempt at communication. It'll help your case. After Detective Chen left, Marcus arrived. He'd been waiting, he said, giving the police time to do their work first. Now it was time to handle the legal side. I've been doing some digging, Marcus said, settling into the chair across from me. He pulled out a folder thick with papers. Jennifer's in deeper than we thought. How deep? David asked. She owes money to at least 3 different creditors. The casino, a private loan company charging 30% interest. And, he paused, looking uncomfortable, and a man named Tommy Greco. He's got connections to some unsavory people, Aunt Maggie. The kind who don't take kindly to unpaid debts. A chill ran down my spine. How much does she owe him? $42,000, plus interest. David let out a low whistle. So that's who was threatening her. Most likely. I've got a PI looking into it, but we need to be careful. If Greco thinks Jennifer's going to jail and can't pay, Marcus looked at me meaningfully, he might look for other avenues of collection. You mean he might come after my mother? David's voice went cold. It's a possibility. Not a strong one. You're not legally responsible for Jennifer's debts, and Greco knows that. But I want you both to be aware. I thought about that. About dangerous men and unpaid debts and the mess Jennifer had dragged into our lives. But instead of fear, I felt something else. Anger. Clean, sharp anger. Let him try, I said quietly. Both Marcus and David looked at me in surprise. I beat cancer, I continued. I'm not going to be intimidated by some loan shark who preys on desperate people. If he comes near me, I'll call the police. And I'll keep calling them until he gets the message. Marcus smiled slightly. That's the spirit, Aunt Maggie. But still, I'm going to recommend you upgrade your security system. Maybe install cameras, just to be safe. I'll take care of it, David said immediately. Today, we spent the next hour going over strategy. Marcus explained the process, the investigation, the potential charges, the timeline. He talked about asset protection, about filing a civil suit separate from the criminal case, about obtaining a restraining order if necessary. My head was spinning by the time he finished. But one thing was clear. This was going to be a long fight. Jennifer wouldn't go down easily. She'd hire lawyers, maybe claim I was confused because of the chemo, maybe argue that I'd given her permission verbally even if there was no written record. She's going to play the victim, Marcus warned. She'll say she was desperate, scared, that she made a mistake but didn't mean any harm. She'll cry. She'll apologize. And some people might believe her. But you don't think a jury would? I asked, not after they see the evidence. Not after they hear what she spent the money on. Vacations and handbags while you were getting chemotherapy? He shook his head. That's not desperation. That's cruelty. The days that followed were strange, surreal. I moved through my house, I kept reminding myself, and everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. The kitchen where I'd made breakfast for 30 years, the garden I'd tended every spring, the porch where I'd watched David learn to ride a bike. All of it was still there, still mine, but now there was a shadow over it. A mortgage I never signed. A threat I couldn't quite see. David moved back in temporarily. He didn't ask, just showed up on the 3rd day with a suitcase and a determined expression. I'm not leaving you alone in this house, he said. Not until we know you're safe, I didn't argue. The truth was, I was grateful for the company. Grateful to hear footsteps upstairs, to have someone to share meals with, to not be alone with my thoughts. He'd gone back to his apartment once, he told me, to pack some things. Jennifer had been there. She'd cried, begged him to talk to her, promised she'd fix everything if he'd just give her a chance. What did you say? I asked. Nothing. I packed my bag and left. He stared into his coffee cup. She kept saying she loved me, that she never meant to hurt anyone, that she was sick, that gambling is an addiction, that she needed help, not punishment. And what do you think? He was quiet for a long time. I think maybe all of that is true. Maybe she does have an addiction. Maybe she is sick. But that doesn't change what she did. It doesn't undo the betrayal. He looked up at me. Does that make me a bad person? That I can't forgive her? No, sweetheart. That makes you human. The notary's records arrived a week later. Marcus brought them over, his expression grim. The notary was a man named Carl Hoffman, licensed for 23 years, no history of complaints or violations. According to his statement, Jennifer had called him on May 14th, requesting an urgent house call for the following day. She'd explained that her mother-in-law, me, was elderly and undergoing medical treatment that I was having trouble getting around, and that we needed to refinance the house to cover medical expenses. He came to your house at 2 p.m. on May 15th, Marcus said, reading from the report. Jennifer answered the door. She brought him into the dining room, and according to him, you were sitting right there at the table. I felt cold. That's impossible. I was at the hospital, I know, but he swears he saw you. He describes you as an elderly Asian woman, approximately 60 years old, thin, wearing a blue sweater. He watched you sign the documents. He verified your ID, driver's license, and stamped everything as legitimate. David's face had gone pale. So Jennifer didn't just forge the signature. She what? Hired someone to impersonate Mom? Marcus nodded slowly. That's the only explanation that makes sense. She found someone who looked enough like you, gave her your ID or a fake one, and had her sit there while the notary watched. I sat down heavily. The level of premeditation was staggering. This wasn't a desperate mistake. This was a planned crime. Jennifer had thought through every detail, anticipated every obstacle, and executed it perfectly, almost perfectly. The blue sweater, I said quietly. Marcus looked up. What about it? I have a blue cardigan. It's been in my closet for years. Jennifer knew which one. I felt sick. She dressed someone in my clothes. In my house. To steal my home. David stood abruptly and walked to the window, his shoulders tight. I could see him shaking, trying to contain his rage. There's more, Marcus said gently. The security footage from the bank. The day Jennifer opened the account where the money was transferred. She didn't go alone. He pulled out a printed screenshot. The image was grainy but clear enough. Jennifer at a bank counter, smiling. And beside her, his hand on her shoulder, was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, dark hair, expensive suit. Who is that? I asked. His name is Ryan Castellano. We're still digging, but so far we know he's a professional poker player. High stakes. He and Jennifer have known each other for at least 2 years. There are photos of them together on social media, at casino events, tournaments. Marcus paused. David, I'm sorry, but I think you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that Jennifer's relationship with this man wasn't just professional. David didn't turn around. His voice was barely audible. They were having an affair. We don't know that for certain. Yes, we do. He turned, and his face was a mask of pain. All those nights she said she was at the gym. All those weekends visiting her sister. She was with him, wasn't she? Marcus didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. I watched my son absorb this new betrayal layered on top of the others. The woman he'd loved. The woman he'd trusted. She hadn't just stolen from his mother. She'd been lying to him about everything. Their entire marriage had been built on deception. I want a divorce, David said flatly, as soon as possible. I don't care what it costs. I'll start the paperwork, Marcus said. Given the circumstances, we can probably expedite it. Fraud, infidelity, those are grounds for fault divorce in this state. Good. David's jaw was set. I want her out of my life completely. No contact, no reconciliation, nothing. My phone rang then, interrupting us. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Mrs. Chen? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. My name is Rebecca Stafford. I'm an attorney representing Jennifer Chen. I'd like to discuss a possible resolution to this situation before it escalates further. I looked at Marcus, who'd heard enough to understand. He held out his hand for the phone. I gave it to him. This is Marcus Chen, Mrs. Chen's legal counsel, he said smoothly. Any communication needs to go through me. Do not contact my client directly again. He hung up without waiting for a response. So she's lawyered up, David said. It was only a matter of time. Marcus set the phone down. This means she knows how serious this is. She's probably been advised that criminal charges are coming. Her attorney is going to try to negotiate, probably push for restitution in exchange for avoiding prosecution. Can they do that? I asked. They can try. But ultimately, it's up to the district attorney's office whether to file charges. And honestly, Aunt Maggie, this case is too strong to ignore. Identity theft, forgery, fraud, the DA is going to want to make an example of this. What happens to Jennifer if she's convicted? Marcus's expression was serious. Realistically, 5 to 10 years in state prison. Maybe more if they charge her with elder abuse, which they should. 5 to 10 years. I thought about what that meant. Jennifer was 32 years old. She'd be in her late 30s, maybe early 40s by the time she got out. Her life, essentially over, and I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no pity, just emptiness. Do whatever you need to do, I said. I want this handled properly. 3 weeks later, Jennifer was arrested. I wasn't there when it happened. David was at work, and I was home alone, tending to my garden for the first time since before the diagnosis. My hands were in the soil, pulling weeds from around the rose bushes when Marcus called. "It's done," he said simply. "They picked her up an hour ago. She's being processed now." I sat back on my heels, dirt under my fingernails, and stared at the roses. They were blooming despite everything. Deep red, vibrant, alive. What are the charges? 3 counts of felony fraud, 2 counts of identity theft, 1 count of forgery, and 1 count of elder financial abuse. He paused. "The DA is taking this seriously, Maggie. They're not offering any deals. Not yet anyway." "Good," I said. And I meant it. That evening, David came home and we saw it on the news. Local news, nothing major, just a brief segment about a woman arrested for defrauding her mother-in-law out of nearly $200,000. They showed Jennifer's mugshot. No makeup now, her hair messy, her eyes red and swollen. David stared at the screen, his face unreadable. Then he picked up the remote and turned it off. "I thought I'd feel something," he said quietly. "Relief, maybe, or anger, but I just feel empty." "That's grief," I told him. "You're mourning the person you thought she was." Was any of it real? He looked at me, and there was something broken in his eyes. Our wedding day. The promises we made. Did she mean any of it, or was I just what? A mark? A way to get access to money? "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe she loved you in her own way. Maybe she didn't. But that's her truth to live with, not yours." He nodded slowly, but I could see the question would haunt him for a long time. The preliminary hearing was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, life had to continue. I started physical therapy to rebuild my strength after the chemo. I went to follow-up appointments with my oncologist, who told me the scans looked good, that I was in remission. That word, remission, felt like a gift and a threat all at once. Cancer-free, but always watching, always waiting to see if it would come back. I started sleeping better. The nightmares about losing my house faded. David installed security cameras like he'd promised, 3 outside, 2 inside. At first, they made me feel paranoid, constantly checking my phone for alerts. But gradually, they became comforting. Proof that I was protected, that no one could sneak into my life again without me knowing. Jennifer's lawyer called Marcus repeatedly, trying to negotiate. She wanted to make a deal, plead guilty to lesser charges, agree to repayment, avoid prison time. But Marcus held firm, and so did I. She had 6 months to come clean, I told him. 6 months while I was sick and vulnerable. She didn't. She spent the money on vacations and jewelry and gambling. She hired someone to impersonate me. "This wasn't a mistake, Marcus. This was calculated." "I know," he said. "And the DA knows it too. They're standing firm." Then, about a week before the hearing, something unexpected happened. David came home from work looking shaken. He sat down at the kitchen table without taking off his coat. "Jennifer's mother called me," he said. "I was making dinner, chicken soup, simple and warm." I set down the spoon carefully. "What did she want?" "She begged me to talk to you. To ask you to drop the charges." He rubbed his face. "She said Jennifer tried to kill herself yesterday. Pills. Her cellmate found her and called for help. She's in the prison hospital now." My hands gripped the counter. "Is she—" "She's alive, stable, but her mom is." He shook his head. "She's a mess, Mom. Crying, saying her daughter is sick, that she needs treatment, not punishment, that prison is going to kill her." I sat down across from him. "What did you say?" "I said I'd talk to you. But honestly," he looked up at me, "I don't know what to think anymore. Part of me says she deserves everything she gets. But part of me," his voice cracked, "part of me remembers the woman I fell in love with. And I wonder if we're pushing her towards something she can't come back from." I reached across the table and took his hand. David, listen to me. What Jennifer did to herself is not your responsibility. It's not mine either. She made choices, bad choices, criminal choices, and now she has to face the consequences. If she's truly suicidal, then she needs psychiatric help. The prison system has resources for that. Do they, though? He looked skeptical. Or is that just what we tell ourselves to feel better? I didn't have an answer for that. That night, I lay awake thinking about Jennifer in a hospital bed, tubes in her arms, guards outside her door. I thought about her mother's tears, about the woman Jennifer had been when David first brought her home, bright, charming, eager to be part of our family. Where had that woman gone? Had she ever really existed? I thought about mercy, about forgiveness, about what the right thing to do was. And then I thought about opening that envelope, about seeing my house, my life's work, taken from me while I was too sick to fight back, about the forged signature, the hired impersonator, the lies upon lies upon lies. Jennifer had made her choices. Now I had to make mine. The next morning I called Marcus. I want to write a victim impact statement, I said, for the hearing. I want the judge to hear from me directly. Are you sure, Aunt Maggie? You don't have to be there. We can handle this without you, I'm sure. I want to look her in the eye. I want her to hear what she did to me. Okay, Marcus said quietly. I'll let the DA know. I spent the next 3 days writing that statement. I went through a dozen drafts, crossing out words, starting over. Too angry, too cold, too emotional, too detached. Finally, I found the right tone. The right words. I practiced reading it aloud to myself in the mirror. My voice shook at first, but by the 10th time through, it was steady, strong. David offered to come with me to the hearing, but I told him no. This is something I need to do alone, I said. You've been carrying enough. Let me carry this part. The morning of the hearing, I woke early. I dressed carefully, a navy blue dress, simple but dignified. I did my hair, put on minimal makeup. I wanted to look like myself, not a victim, not fragile, just me. Marcus picked me up at 8. We drove to the courthouse in silence. He kept glancing at me, checking, but I looked straight ahead. Focused. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights, wooden benches, everything institutional and cold. Jennifer's family sat on one side, her mother, her sister, an aunt. They looked at me with a mixture of fear and resentment. I sat on the other side with Marcus, alone. Jennifer was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her wrists in handcuffs. She looked thin, tired. When her eyes found mine, something flickered across her face. Shame, maybe, or calculation. I couldn't tell anymore. The judge was a woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked tired, like she'd seen 1,000 cases just like this one and knew she'd see 1,000 more. We're here today for the preliminary hearing in the case of the state versus Jennifer Marie Chen, she said. Her voice flat and professional. The defendant is charged with 3 counts of felony fraud, 2 counts of identity theft, 1 count of forgery, and 1 count of elder financial abuse. She looked up. How does the defendant plead? Jennifer's lawyer stood, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit. Not guilty, Your Honor. My client maintains her innocence and— Save it for trial, counselor, the judge interrupted. We're here to determine if there's sufficient evidence to proceed. I've reviewed the preliminary documents. The state may call its first witness. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Amanda Torres, stood. Your Honor, we'd like to call Margaret Chen to the stand. My heart hammered as I walked to the witness box. The bailiff swore me in, and I sat down, my hands folded in my lap. I could feel Jennifer's eyes on me, but I didn't look at her. Not yet. Ms. Torres asked me to state my name, my age, my relationship to the defendant. Basic questions, establishing the foundation. Then she moved to the heart of it. Mrs. Chen, did you at any time authorize Jennifer Chen to take out a mortgage on your property at 428 Maple Street? No, I did not. Did you sign any documents related to a home equity loan or line of credit in May of this year? No. Were you aware that such a loan had been taken out in your name? Not until I received a mortgage statement in October, after I completed chemotherapy treatment. Ms. Torres held up the forged document, asked me to identify it, to point out the signature. I explained again about the loop in the M, about the angle, about how I knew it wasn't mine, even though someone had tried very hard to make it look like it was. And where were you on May 15th, the day this document was notarized? I was at County General Hospital, receiving my 3rd round of chemotherapy. I was admitted overnight due to complications. So you were not at your home at 2 p.m. when the notary claims to have witnessed your signature? No. I was in a hospital bed, too sick to stand. Ms. Torres nodded, then turned to the judge. Your Honor, the state has hospital records confirming Mrs. Chen's admission, time-stamped security footage showing she never left the premises, and witness statements from medical staff. The defendant not only forged Mrs. Chen's signature, but arranged for someone to impersonate her during the notarization. This was a carefully planned, deliberately executed crime against a vulnerable elderly woman undergoing cancer treatment. Jennifer's lawyer objected, arguing that there was no proof his client had arranged for an impersonator, that perhaps the notary was mistaken or complicit, that this was all circumstantial. The judge silenced him with a look. Mrs. Chen, she said, addressing me directly, I understand you've prepared a victim impact statement. The court would like to hear it. This was the moment. I pulled the folded paper from my purse, but I didn't need to read it. I'd memorized every word. I looked at Jennifer then. Really looked at her. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Her lawyer had his hand on her arm, probably telling her to look remorseful, to seem sympathetic. But I saw past the tears. I saw the calculation behind them. Your Honor, I began, my voice steady. 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was the most frightening moment of my life. Not because I was afraid of dying. I've lived a good life, and I've made my peace with mortality. I was afraid because I didn't know what would happen to the home I'd spent 23 years building. The home I raised my son in. The home that represented everything I'd worked for. I paused, taking a breath. Jennifer Chen came into my life 3 years ago as my daughter-in-law. I welcomed her. I trusted her. When she offered to help me with paperwork during my treatment, I was grateful. I thought she was being kind. I thought she cared about me. Jennifer's shoulders shook. Her mother was sobbing audibly in the gallery. But Jennifer didn't care about me. While I was in a hospital bed, vomiting from chemotherapy, losing my hair, wondering if I'd live to see another year, she was forging my signature. She was stealing my home. She was spending money on vacations and jewelry and gambling while I was fighting for my life. My voice didn't waver, didn't break. What Jennifer did wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was calculated, methodical, and cruel. She looked me in the eye, called me Mom, and betrayed me in the worst possible way. She didn't just try to steal my house. She tried to steal my security, my dignity, my future. I looked directly at Jennifer now. I survived cancer. I will survive what you did to me, but you need to understand something. What you did has consequences, real consequences, and you need to face them. I turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for justice. I'm asking that Jennifer Chen be held accountable for her actions, that she not be allowed to hide behind tears and excuses and claims of addiction. She knew what she was doing. She chose to do it anyway, and she needs to answer for that. The courtroom was silent when I finished. Even Jennifer's mother had stopped crying. The judge looked at me for a long moment, then at Jennifer, then at the stack of evidence on her desk. I've heard enough, she said. There is more than sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. The defendant will remain in custody. Bail is denied. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Jennifer's lawyer immediately stood, protesting, but the judge was already leaving. The bailiffs moved to take Jennifer back. She turned to look at me one last time, her face streaked with tears and mascara. I'm sorry, she mouthed, but I didn't respond. I just watched as they led her away. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. You did good, Aunt Maggie. Really good. I nodded, but I felt hollowed out, empty, like I'd used up every ounce of strength I had left. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Marcus shielded me, guided me to his car, but I heard their questions anyway. Mrs. Chen, how do you feel about your daughter-in-law's arrest? Do you think justice was served? Will you ever forgive her? I didn't answer. I just got in the car and let Marcus drive me home. The trial was set for 3 months later, but it never happened. 2 weeks after the preliminary hearing, Jennifer's lawyer contacted Marcus with a plea deal. She would plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a recommendation of 8 years with possibility of parole after 5. She would also agree to full restitution, though how she planned to pay back $180,000 from prison, no one could explain. "What do you think?" Marcus asked me over the phone. I was in my garden again. It had become my refuge, the place where I could think clearly. The roses were fading now as winter approached, but I'd planted bulbs for spring, tulips, daffodils, planning for a future I could finally believe in again. "Will she actually serve the full time?" I asked. Probably not. With good behavior, she could be out in 4 or 5 years. "But Maggie, that's 4 or 5 years where she faces consequences, where she can't hurt anyone else, and you won't have to testify at trial. You won't have to relive this over and over." I thought about that, about sitting in a courtroom for days or weeks, being cross-examined by Jennifer's lawyer, having my life picked apart in front of strangers. About David having to testify against his own wife. "Tell them yes," I said. "Accept the deal." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. This was never about revenge, Marcus. It was about making sure she couldn't do this to someone else. 8 years is enough time for that. And I paused, surprised by the emotion in my own voice. "I need to move on. I need to heal." "Okay," he said softly. "I'll let them know." The sentencing happened on a cold Tuesday in December. I didn't attend. David did, though I told him he didn't have to. He said he needed closure, needed to hear the judge say the words, make it official. He came to my house afterward and sat in the kitchen while I made him tea. He looked older somehow, like the past few months had aged him years. 8 years, he said quietly. She cried. Her mother cried. Her whole family was there, begging the judge for leniency. But the judge said what you said, that this wasn't a mistake, that it was calculated and cruel. He wrapped his hands around the mug. "She's going to a facility upstate, medium security. Her lawyer says she'll get addiction counseling there." "That's good," I said. "She needs help. Do you really believe that? That she can change?" I sat down across from him. "I don't know. Maybe. People can surprise you." I reached across the table and took his hand. "But that's not your responsibility anymore. You gave her 3 years of your life, your trust, your love. She threw it away. Now you get to decide what comes next." "The divorce was finalized yesterday," he said. "I'm officially single again. How do you feel?" He thought about that. "Lighter," he finally said. "Like I've been carrying something heavy for so long, I forgot what it felt like to stand up straight." We sat together in comfortable silence, drinking tea, watching the late afternoon sun slant through the kitchen windows. The same kitchen where this had all begun, with an envelope on the table. But it felt different now, reclaimed, mine again. "I've been thinking," David said after a while, "about what I want to do next. I'm tired of my job, tired of the city. I was wondering," he looked at me hesitantly, "would you mind if I stayed here for a while? Just until I figure things out. I could help with the mortgage payments, help fix up the place." "David," I interrupted gently, "this is your home. It's always been your home. You don't need permission to stay." His eyes filled with tears. "I feel like I failed you, Mom. Like I brought this nightmare into your life. You fell in love with the wrong person." "That's not a failure. That's just being human." I squeezed his hand. "And honestly, having you here these past few months, it's helped me more than you know. I don't want to be alone anymore." He smiled then, a real smile, the first I'd seen in weeks. "Okay, then I'll stay, at least for a while." The mortgage situation took longer to resolve. Marcus filed a motion to have the loan declared fraudulent, to force the bank to void it entirely. It took 8 months of legal battles, mountains of paperwork, and more stress than I wanted to remember. But finally, in late summer, the judge ruled in our favor. The loan was nullified. The house was mine again, free and clear, just like it had been before Jennifer entered our lives. I cried when Marcus called with the news. Not sad tears, relief tears. The kind that come when you've been holding your breath for so long, you forgot what it felt like to breathe normally. David and I celebrated that night with takeout Chinese food and cheap wine, sitting on the back porch and watching fireflies dance in the garden. We didn't talk about Jennifer, didn't talk about trials or lawyers or mortgages. We just sat together, father and son. No, I corrected myself, mother and son, and enjoyed the peace. Life slowly returned to normal. Or rather, to a new normal. I went to my cancer follow-ups every 3 months. Clear scans every time. The word remission stopped sounding like a threat and started sounding like a promise. I started volunteering at a local cancer support center, helping newly diagnosed patients navigate the overwhelming maze of treatment and insurance and fear. I told them my story, not the part about Jennifer, just the part about survival, about choosing to keep living even when it's hard. David found a new job, something he actually enjoyed, landscape design. He started helping me expand the garden, building raised beds for vegetables, installing a small pond with water lilies. The house slowly transformed from a place of pain into a place of growth. We had dinner together most nights. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just sat in comfortable silence. But we were healing, both of us. Slowly. One evening, about a year after the sentencing, my sister Diane came to visit. She brought wine and sympathy and a fierce hug that nearly cracked my ribs. "I should have been here more," she said. "During the chemo, during all of it. I'm sorry. You're here now," I told her. "That's what matters." We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd confronted Jennifer, where everything had fallen apart, and we laughed. About old memories, about our mother's terrible cooking, about the time we got lost on a road trip in the 80s and ended up in 3 different states before finding our way home. And somewhere in that laughter, I realized something. I was happy, not despite everything that had happened. Not in spite of the cancer and the betrayal and the fear, but because of it. Because I'd survived. Because I'd fought back. Because I'd refused to let someone else's cruelty define my life. It's been 2 years now since I found that envelope on my kitchen table. 2 years since my world tilted sideways and I had to learn how to stand up straight again. People ask me sometimes if I've forgiven Jennifer. If I think about her, if I wonder how she's doing in prison, the truth is I don't think about her much anymore. Not out of bitterness, but because I've chosen to fill my life with other things, better things, the garden that blooms bigger and brighter every spring, the grandniece who visits on weekends and helps me bake cookies, the cancer survivors I mentor who call me when they're scared, when they need someone who understands. David is still here, living in his old room, though it doesn't look like a childhood bedroom anymore. He's dating someone new, a kind woman named Patricia who teaches elementary school and laughs at his terrible jokes. I like her. More importantly, he likes himself again. The weight he carried for so long, the guilt, the shame, the broken trust, it's lighter now. Not gone, maybe it never will be completely gone, but manageable. Last month I got a letter. It was from Jennifer, forwarded through Marcus because I'd made it clear I didn't want her to have my direct address. He asked if I wanted him to open it, to screen it first, but I told him no. I needed to decide for myself. I almost threw it away without reading it. Almost. But curiosity got the better of me. It was 3 pages long. An apology, she said. An explanation. She talked about her addiction, about the therapy she was getting in prison, about how she finally understood the magnitude of what she'd done. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, didn't deserve it, but wanted me to know that she was sorry, that she thought about me every day, that she wished she could undo it all. I read it once. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'll write back. Maybe I'll tell her that I hope she gets better, that she finds peace, that she never hurts anyone again. Maybe I'll tell her that I've moved on, that I'm happy, that she no longer has power over my life, or maybe I won't. Maybe that letter will stay in that drawer, unopened and unanswered. And that will be my final word on the subject. Because here's what I've learned through all of this. Forgiveness isn't something you owe to someone who hurt you. It's not a gift you give to make them feel better. It's something you do for yourself, when you're ready, if you're ever ready. And if you're not, that's okay too. I don't need to forgive Jennifer to be happy. I don't need her apology to move forward. I don't need anything from her at all. What I needed, I found. I found my strength. I found my voice. I found out that even at 64 years old, even after cancer, even after betrayal, I'm still here. Still standing. Still planting bulbs for next spring. My house is mine. My life is mine. And that's enough. So if you're going through something right now, if someone you trusted has betrayed you, if the ground has fallen out from under your feet, If you're scared and hurt and wondering how you'll survive, I want you to know something. You will survive. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but you will, because you're stronger than you think, stronger than they thought. And on the other side of this pain, there's a life waiting for you. A good life, your life. You just have to choose to keep living it. I did, and I'm so glad I did. I sit here now in my kitchen, the winter sun coming through the window, a cup of tea in my hands that finally tastes the way it should. No metallic aftertaste, no shadow of sickness, just tea, just warmth, just peace. My roses are dormant now, sleeping under the frost, but I know they'll bloom again. They always do. That's what survivors do. We bloom again. Take care of yourselves out there. And remember, your home, your heart, your life, they're worth fighting for, always.